Hey guys, welcome back to A Page in the Chapter, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Paige and it is time for my July wrap up. So I read 7 books in the month of July and I am honestly really happy with that. I feel like my reading has been fluctuating so much in the past couple months, and even when I've actively been trying to read, I've just been struggling a little bit. But in July it just didn't feel forced. It felt so natural. I just kind of picked up a book when I felt like picking a book. And yes, I did the 24-hour challenge, which contributed to the majority of the books read this month. It still felt very natural and easy, and there wasn't a lot of pressure. So I think 7 is a really good number to build off of. See if in August I can read 6 or 7 books without a 24-hour challenge being in the mix there. And yeah, we'll see what we can do, but I'm very, very happy with 7 books. If you guys like TBRs and wrap-ups, then I post one of each every single month, so do please feel free to hit that big red subscribe button down below to stay tuned for that type of content if you so wish. I also upload other bookish content every Wednesday and every Friday for you to enjoy. And without further ado, let's just get into the books because I have some thoughts that I wish to share. So the first book that I read in the month of July was one that I really, really enjoyed and kind of took me by surprise a little bit, I think. And I was saving it for a heatwave to read it in, and I did in fact read it in a heatwave, and it was top tier vibes, and that is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. So this is a Schitt's Creek inspired rom-com which follows our main character Piper Bellinger, and she has a very, very, very rich stepfather, and when she pushes her stepdad too far and she really is starting to act out, he decides to send her back to Washington in this small little town, this very small, drizzly little town that she was originally born in, so that she can learn the meaning of money, learn the meaning of life, grow up a little bit because she is in her late 20s now and still acting like a teenager. And so naturally, when Piper moves to this town, she has all of these small town people that she has to win over. Most notably Brendan, who is very willing to give her a hard time. I just had so much fun with this book. It was so enjoyable. I am definitely going to be picking up Hook, Line and Sinker by Tessa Bailey, which is book 2 in the Bellinger sister world. I just had such a good time with it. I loved every aspect of it. I just thought that it was so fun for the summertime, and I do really recommend. I thought Tessa Bailey's writing was really good to me. I will say that it was a bit difficult to understand why Brendan liked Piper. Tessa Bailey was really going for this whole he likes her for her and he doesn't want to change anything about her type of romance, which was nice and appreciated that Piper didn't really have to change core elements of her personality for her character growth throughout this book. But I would have liked to have seen more genuine reasons why Brendan fell for Piper and not just the surface level things. For what it was, I was fine with that. I wasn't reading this for it to be the next great American novel or anything like that. I just wanted a good, solid, fun rom-com to read, and this delivered. So then I completely switched up the vibes and I went with a non-fiction in Written in Bone by Sue Black. I really wanted to get this read before I go back to uni because Sue Black is a very noted forensic anthropologist in the UK, and she has written a book called All That Remains, which was her first book, and now this book, Written in Bone. So I've had this book for almost a year and it's taken me until now to read it, but honestly, so happy. I wasn't the biggest fan of All That Remains. I didn't feel like it dealt with cases and the actual work of an anthropologist enough, and just fell a little bit flat for me. But I loved this one. It had so many cases. I loved the fact that it was all broken up into the sections of the body, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. It would have been a 5-star if it wasn't for the fact that around the 250 page mark, Sue Black includes a very, very personal story relating to sexual assault, so there are trigger warnings for that. It's very graphic and very emotive, and I was more angry at the fact that there's no trigger warning or content warning at the beginning of this book than I was about the fact that it was included. Sue Black is writing about the cases she's worked on in her own life, and it's her book, and I guess she can include whatever she wants. But the fact that there was no warning made me dock a whole star. I get that some people might be thinking, okay, it's a book about murder and horrible things that happen to human beings, like you should be aware of things like this before going in. But to me, there is a pretty big difference between the scientific study of a body and an objective case-like view of something horrendous that's happened being included, and then the very personal, emotive language that was used to describe this scene. It just felt like two very different things to think about, and I just didn't like that there was no warning. I didn't like that I had to read that. I was really upset about it, because this was on track to be a 5-star read, and then it just all went a little bit downhill. But it's fine. I still enjoyed the book overall. I do still really recommend the book as like a forensic science, forensic anthropology book if you are interested. Just be wary of that event around the 200-page mark. And so then the third book of the month, I was feeling very down. I've been fluctuating a lot between ups and downs with my mental health lately, but that's fine. I'm managing, I'm coping. But I really just wanted something that was either going to fit my I am in my 20s and depressed state, or was going to feel very hopeful and uplifting. And I'd heard things about this particular book that I felt like if I read it and it ended up being either one of those things, I would be okay with that. So it seemed like a very safe choice, and that is Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. I wasn't ever really tempted by this one, but I saw the book Leo talking about how it was very hopeful and exactly kind of what she needed, and I decided that I would pick it up. And then when I was in this mood, I just figured this book is either going to make me depressed, which I'm okay with, I can just deal with my feelings, or it's going to be very uplifting, which is never a bad thing. I would say actually yes, that it was quite an uplifting story. Even when there were darkness and sadness and this like late 20s ennui that Sally Rooney is just amazing at writing, even when that was included, it still felt very light and breezy and like a very summer book. It's a little bit confusing to me, honestly, because nothing about the content was any different from Sally Rooney's other books. The story itself was just so Sally Rooney, so character driven, so here are some 20-year-old characters who are really struggling and are feeling depressed and can't communicate well with each other, and let's watch what happens. But it felt so much more hopeful, and I just absolutely adored it. I will be rereading it again and tabbing it up with quotes and things. Like, this is probably my favourite Sally Rooney novel. I just found it to be so beautiful and exactly what I needed in that headspace that I was in, and I think that even if I wasn't in that headspace, I would still have really enjoyed it. And Sally Rooney is just an author that has completely taken me by surprise, because I thought that I would hate her books. I had zero interest in reading any of them. Like, I was so against Sally Rooney. I was seeing the TikTok hype train and I was like, no, I am never hopping on a Sally Rooney book, ever. And then I had to read Conversations with Friends for reading like Taylor Swift, and really enjoyed it. Really took me by surprise. And then the next thing I know, I was buying another one and I was really enjoying that. So apparently I'm on the Sally Rooney hype train. You heard it here first. I was wrong. And so then we get to the 4 books that I read for my 24-hour challenge. I will still run through them with you, but probably in slightly less detail, or maybe slightly more detail. I don't know. We'll see what happens, basically. Sometimes in my vlogs I can go into a lot more detail in how I feel about a book, and sometimes in my vlogs I can get carried away and not go into detail about how I feel about the book. So let's just do it now so that you know how I feel about these books. So the first book that I read for my little 24-hour readathon where I was learning to tab was This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Motar and Max Gladstone. I did in fact tab this up. The little green tabs are for themes of death and the little red tabs are for themes of love and romance. So you can see how the two themes are greatly contrasted against each other. I would also have quite liked to have gone through and done a themes of technology versus themes of nature little colour scheme tab too, but we moved, that's fine. I didn't really realise or pick up on those themes until I was already well into the book, and that is something that I do have a bit of trouble with tabbing in this way of with themes and analytical style tabbing, is you have no idea really what you can tab for until you're already in the book or after you've read it and looking back. So in terms of tabbing, I probably will not tab in this way going forward, just because I don't do analytical reviews. I don't have to analyse fiction books for university. Like, I'm not going to be writing an essay on this or talking an essay on this or having these kinds of discussions with people. So it doesn't really make sense practically for me to continue tabbing in this way. I would rather have my books be a little bit more personal to me. But all in all, how did I find this book? I really struggled to rate this book, and in fact I did not rate it because I thought that it was so stunningly written. Like, it was just an objectively beautiful book, and in that sense it should have been a 4 or 5 star, but I just didn't love it. I really struggled to find the romance between our two characters, and I really struggled by the end of the book to be able to tell the difference like between the characters. I found their voices to be so similar, and there was just absolutely zero world building in this book. Nothing to me really became clear. Maybe I'm just too used to fantasy books where the world building is kind of given to you and you don't have to work it out for yourself. But there's just so many like metaphors of time being like a hair and like a braid, but it wasn't ever really explained. I didn't understand how our main characters, Red and Blue, were able to send these letters like through time to each other. It was just never made clear enough, and maybe that is the beauty of the book. Maybe that is entirely intentional and why you would love it. But to me, it just didn't quite hit the mark. So I've just kind of left this one unrated because I'm conflicted about whether to rate objectively or rate based on my own experience. But that is how I felt about the book. I thought the themes were beautiful. I loved the dichotomies of romance and death and technology and nature. I thought that was beautiful to read, and the lyrical writing also stunning. I will definitely be coming back to this book for quotes and things, especially the quotes relating to death. Maybe I can use them in some way. Do with my review what you will. I'm sorry I don't have a rating for you, but hopefully this was still helpful. But then after reading This Is How You Lose the Time War, I just wanted something very fun and light. So I decided to pick up The Score by Elle Kennedy, which is book 3 in the off-campus series, and this is the best one so far. So this follows Dean and Ali, and we see Dean in his man hallways throughout the previous books, and he gets a real redemption arc in this book, and his redemption arc is fantastic, but he's also still Dean. The Score ends on a massive cliffhanger that gives you the trope for book 4, and I'm absolutely dying to read book 4 now. It was not on my August TBR, but I will definitely be reading it in August because, oh my god, do I need to know what happens. I will say there is a lot of spicy scenes in The Score. So many that they lose their enjoyment and their edge after a little while. But if that's what you're coming into the book for, then, you know, that's probably going to be fine with you. And they were all well written, they were all really fun to read, and again, like, I just wanted a very fun, uplifting, spicy romance that was going to wake me up and get me excited to be reading for the rest of the day, and this book did that, and is the first book in the off-campus series that I've read and been like, oh my god, I have to continue with this series right now. I am so happy that I read this book, and I cannot wait to continue with the off-campus series. And so then, because I'd had so much luck with The Score, I was like, okay, let's pick up another romance. If you saw one of my previous vlogs, you would know that I picked up Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, and so I decided for this vlog, it was time to finally read it. I am not a huge Colleen Hoover person. I've never been tempted by Colleen Hoover books before. She's just not really been my thing. But the book that has given me biggest urge to read Colleen Hoover, the only book she has that has seemed like it would kind of be my thing, is this one, so I decided to give it a go. This is an enemies to lovers romance, friends with benefits type of situation. It follows our main character Miles, and he is deeply traumatized. The man needs some serious therapy, and he meets Tate, who is his best friend's younger sister, and they start engaging in a whole like spicy thing. I gave this book 1 star. I would give it 0 stars if I could. It was atrocious. There is a detail that is included about Miles in this book that is so irrelevant but ruins the whole book. Like, it's a small detail, ruined the whole thing for me, and it made me even angrier that it really did not need to be in there. Miles could have still had the same trauma that made him not want to be in a serious relationship with Tate if this thing was taken out of the book. Like, it was an irrelevant detail. And I've heard that this is just a thing with Colleen Hoover books, that she just puts super irrelevant details that don't affect the storyline into her books. And I really don't know what editor, publishing house, however the publishing works, who read this and was like, yeah, I really want to put my name on that book. Like, I want to say that I've edited it and published it because it's genuinely good. It is one of the worst books I've ever read, and if you genuinely are feeling down and want to just read a book to laugh at it and just have a good time with how bad it is, then I'd recommend this book, because despite the fact that I hated it, gave it 1 star, like think it's the worst thing I've ever read, I could not stop laughing throughout it because it was just genuinely that silly and ridiculous and stupid. And I know those are synonyms, but this book deserves all 3 anyway. It was just so bad, and you can either save yourself or you can read it for a laugh, but I will never ever ever be picking up a Colleen Hoover book again. How is this woman so famous and so successful when this is the crap she produces? What is going on with the world? Seriously. And so then after that, for my 24-hour reader challenge, I needed something that I knew that I liked. I couldn't risk another failure. So far, the only standout book had been The Score. I had not enjoyed Ugly Love. I had been on the fence about This Is How You Lose the Time War. So it was time for a reread, and I decided to reread Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, and again, I tabbed this up. This one has less tabs because, as you can see, towards the end of the book, I got really tired and so I stopped tabbing because it was like early hours of the morning by this point. The plan was that the pink tabs were bits I related to and the yellow tabs were bits I found funny, and I wish that I had given this like the actual time of day to tab it properly, because I really enjoyed it when I had the energy to do it, and it would have been really interesting to just look at the side of this book and see all of the moments I related to and found funny. And especially if I had decided to do this when I first read this book when I was in high school, I would have related to so many more moments. It's like a bit difficult for me now because this book follows our main character Kath in her first year of university as she's navigating that setting as a very shy, introverted individual, and how she escapes into this fanfiction and this fandom that she is involved in as a means of coping with that. And when I tell you that that was me, but I have now gone through all years of university, I have spent a year out of university working on my confidence, and thus I've outgrown this story a little bit, and whilst I still loved it, I probably wouldn't give it 5 stars nowadays because I just don't relate to this story as much. I'm a grown-up now and this is a very teenage world. I've decided to still leave the rating as 5 stars on my Goodreads because this book meant so much to me as a teenager, and I just feel like teenage me deserves to have her 5-star rating stand, and I want to still love this book because of how much it meant to me, so I just don't want to change that rating, even though I don't really relate to it as much now. It was still a very, very enjoyable experience. I'm really glad that I decided to reread this. I kept meaning to reread it whilst I was at uni and didn't ever really get the chance, but it was still nice to do it now even though I'm not. I also loved the way that I tabbed this, and anytime I want to tab up a book in the future, I will be doing this, because at the end of the day, our reading experiences and the books we read and how we find them are all very personal things, and I would just love to be able to pick up a book, see all of the quotes that spoke to me that I loved, all of the moments I related to, all of the things that made me laugh, that made me cry, that made me emotional. Like, I want to just be able to pick up a book and see how it made me feel in sticky tabs on the side. So this is the very personal way that I will continue to annotate my books. These are the 7 books that I read in the month of July. Honestly, a very, very good reading month. It's just made me fall in love with reading again. Like, I'm just excited to read all the time. I count down the hours at work to when I can start reading again, and I love that I'm feeling that way. I mean, who wouldn't be happy to feel that way about their hobby? So super happy with 7 books, super happy with the fact that I enjoyed the majority of them and the reviews, and just excited now to continue on with August and see what progress we can make in the month of August. So do let me know if you've read any of these books, how you found them, what you thought of them. I would love to hear your thoughts and have a chat with you about them in more detail if you have any questions or comments about my reviews. And also do feel free to hit that big red subscribe button down below to stay tuned for bookish content every Wednesday and every Friday. You can also check me out on Instagram and Twitter at Page and Chapter to see what I'm reading and how I'm reviewing it in real time, so you don't have to wait for these monthly TBR and wrap up videos to see that. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week. You're enjoying everything that you are reading and there are no reading slumps in your future, and I will see you on Friday for my next video. Bye guys.